I initially was kidding when I said that I would be the Vikings defensive coordinator in 2023, but it might actually happen since everyone is turning down the Vikings. So Ryan Nielsen took the Falcons job. Sean Desai removed his name from contention. And yesterday, Ejiro Evero is going to the Panthers. So everything is hunky-dory. So everything is all in on Brian Flores. But if he gets the Cardinals head coaching job, or if he takes the Broncos DC job, or if he stays in Pittsburgh, the Vikings could be SOL, and they're sort of up against it right now. So right now, the only two candidates that the Vikings have interviewed and considered are Brian Flores and Mike Pettin. But if Flores turns down the gig, I don't think they should just give it to Pettin. Now, I understand Pettin has 10 years of head coaching and DC experience. We would love to turn to him versus Ed Donatel in the middle of the season, but now you have options, so you should have some options, and they should reopen the search, which, But remember last year, because last year there were three finalists: Aubrey Pleasant, Anthony Weaver, Sean Desai, and then all of a sudden Ed Donatel came out of nowhere. So I guess this isn't unprecedented with Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi, but yeah, so five guys that they should. Well, these guys probably should have been in the mix to start with, but since the Vikings have been turned down by Nielsen and Desai and Evero, maybe check things out. So Jim Leonard obviously makes a ton of sense. Badgers defense was phenomenal this year, 20th in the country. He went 5-3 as the interim head coach after Paul Chryst was fired. They decided to go with Luke Fickell, and Leonard was showed the door. It's fine, but there's reasons why he hasn't had any steam, whether it's in college or in the NFL. Because reportedly his contract is kind of weird, where it'll pay him out even if he doesn't seek employment elsewhere. A lot of these buyouts have offsetting language where if they're actively seeking employment, the team that fired them or the school that fired him doesn't have to have the full payout. Like it's offsetting, right? But Leonard may just take the year off just to stick it to the Badgers, so they have to pay him full freight. It's possible, man. But this one makes all the sense in the world. He's young, innovative, aggressive. He has ties to Mike Pettin. He played under Pettin with the Jets when Pettin was the Jets DC with Rex Ryan. And then also he followed, actually they were together in Baltimore for a year. And they followed him for one season with the Browns. And plus, Leonard and Kevin O'Connell were teammates for one season with the Jets as well. So everything makes sense. Plus, he gets to stay in the Midwest, even though he grew up in Wisconsin, so maybe he hates the Vikings. I mean, you have to factor that one in as well. So, I mean, Leonard may just be on the sidelines because of his contract. It's possible. So Aubrey Pleasant, a guy who's very well versed in the NFC North, currently a Green Bay consultant, or at least was in the middle of the season. He was actually one of the finalists for the DC job last year. He coached cornerbacks with the Rams with Kevin O'Connell. For the previous two seasons, he had been the Lions DB and passing game coordinator. He was thrown under the bus and fired on Halloween. Late October this year because the defense was bad, but then the defense didn't improve. But Dan Campbell's like, that whole thing. So, I mean, it's weird that Pleasant wasn't in the mix this time around. Same thing with Anthony Weaver. So Anthony Weaver, assistant head coach, defensive line coach. By the way, he was a badass defensive lineman back in the day with like the Texans and the Ravens and stuff, man. He played under Pettin when Pettin was with the Ravens. Then he coached with Pettin with the Bills as well as with the Browns. And also Kevin O'Connell coached on the Browns staff with Weaver and Mike Pettin as well. And there's a reason why the Vikings had interest in him last year as their defensive coordinator. And also the Ravens could not block this interview if they wanted to make it happen, because technically he's a defensive line coach. They do not recognize assistant head coach, associate head coach, assistant to the regional head coach, because everything there's three levels in coaching steps, and you can't block an upward promotion. So position coaches, coordinators, head coaches. It does not recognize co-coordinator, does not recognize assistant head coach. It doesn't recognize anything like that. So if the Vikings want to interview Weaver, Ravens couldn't stop him. Andre Patterson, of course, we know and love, Vikings defensive line coach in the late 90s, and then came back in 2014 with Zim, was co-regional defensive coordinator in 2020, and then 2021 he was co-regional defensive coordinator and assistant head coach. He had all the titles, right? And then after the Zimmer regime got washed out, Patterson signed up with the Giants this year. Dre got his revenge in the playoffs. Certainly helped Kevin Thibodeau start out his career solidly, and Leonard Williams, and of course Lawrence and all that stuff. So whatever. But Patterson back as the full defensive coordinator and calling plays, if that's something that he wants. I mean, he knows the area. He could probably get his house back. I don't know. And then lastly, you have Steve Wilks, former Carolina defense coordinator, also went 6-6 as interim head coach, plus was a one and done as head coach of the Cardinals. Very highly respected, very sought after. Already has a bunch of defense coordinator interviews lined up. So I think the Vikings should certainly take a look. But as of right now, they are all in Flores. I said since the beginning, Pettine is a fallback option. They wanted to have someone in the interview process where if they struck out on their top four, it's just like, we interviewed him. All that stuff. And like I said, I was in on Pettine during the season. In the offseason, you actually have options. So I'm kind of like, yeah. Anyways, your thoughts are our thoughts. If the Vikings miss on Flores, they should reopen the defensive coordinator search. Here's 5 possible candidates. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work, put a little something in the Venmo. But to next time, Skull Production Value.